That morning, New York City was just waking up. The sky was still gray, dew clinging to the leaves of sidewalk trees, and the rumble of sanitation trucks and early buses became the city's signature music. On a corner in the South Bronx, a young woman in worn clothes was pulling plastic bottles from a heap of trash in front of a bodega that hadn't opened yet. Her name was Elena, 28. Her face was calm but tired. Every morning she came here, pushing a rattling shopping cart patched with duct tape and overflowing with black trash bags. Her hands were dirty, but her eyes were clear. Few people knew that behind this appearance, Elena was hiding a huge secret. She wasn't just a canner. 1. The gritty alley. Elena navigated a narrow alley, picking up water bottles and empty cans. The sour smell of garbage wafted from a nearby dumpster, but she was used to it. In the distance, a police siren wailed. 2 patrol cars stopped at the end of the block, making people on the sidewalk move aside quickly. One of those cars carried Officer Nolan, a heavy-set cop known for his aggressive demeanor in this precinct. He was known for harassing and chasing off the undesirables he thought ruined the city's image. Several street vendors had their carts kicked over just for selling on the sidewalk. When Nolan got out of the car, his gaze fell immediately on Elena, who was squatting and digging through a trash bag. "Hey, what do you think you're doing there?" he shouted. Elena looked up slowly, lowering her head respectfully. "Sorry, officer. I'm just grabbing bottles. Not bothering anyone." But Nolan didn't care. He approached, eyeing the large bags in her cart. "This is a clean zone. You trying to make a mess? Get lost before I run you in." Elena stayed calm. She stood up, holding her cart. "Okay, officer. I'm moving." But she hadn't taken 2 steps before Nolan shoved her hard. The cart toppled over. Its contents spilled onto the street. Bottles, cans, and plastic scattered. A few passers-by stopped to stare. Nolan glared coldly. "I told you not to make a mess. Damn vagrant." 2. The sound of bottles and dignity. The clinking of the bottles sounded like breaking dignity. Elena was silent. She knew her role today wasn't the real Elena. As a vulnerable person, she had to endure it. But when Nolan stepped closer, kicked the cart again, and stomped on the scattered items, Elena's blood boiled. "Officer, please don't step on those." "That's my whole morning's work," she said, her voice soft but firm. But Nolan just sneered. "You want to work? Get a real job. Stop trashing the street." Roughly, his shiny black boot crushed a plastic bottle near Elena's foot. Crack. The sound was sharp. People nearby started recording discreetly with their phones. Elena stared at the boot for a long time. She was scared, but she had to be patient. In her mind, she replayed the message from her commander. "Don't get emotional. You're there to observe, not to engage. They have to believe you're really homeless." Yes, Elena was actually an undercover detective from the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau, IAB, on a deep cover assignment to expose a ring of extortion and abuse of authority in that precinct, including Nolan himself. But at that moment, the mission felt like a curse. 3. Sidewalk witnesses. A few vendors started to edge closer. A man running a hot dog cart whispered, "Come on, officer. Leave her alone. She's here every day collecting trash. She doesn't bother anyone." Nolan glared at the man. "You want a piece of this?" The man backed away slowly. The crowd held its breath. No one dared challenge Nolan directly, even though everyone knew his reputation. In the other car, Nolan's partner just stood awkwardly, not wanting to intervene but afraid to correct his senior officer. Elena looked down. Tears nearly fell, but she held them back. She knew every second was being recorded. Every action would be evidence later. But on the other hand, her heart ached not because of the mission, but because she saw how easily the powerless were crushed in their own city. As she started to gather the bottles, she whispered internally, "If it weren't for this assignment, I'd have stood up to him." 4. The boiling point. But her patience didn't last. As Elena knelt, Nolan kicked the nearly full bag again. Harder this time. The bag flew into the gutter, splashing dirty water all over Elena's clothes. Maybe that'll teach you. I see you here again. I'm throwing you in a cell, Nolan yelled condescendingly. Elena gripped a bottle in her hand. Her breathing was heavy. The crowd started to murmur. Some looked angry, others looked away in fear. Then a woman's voice called out from across the street. Loud, but trembling. That's too much. She's just trying to make a living. It was Anna, the owner of the corner deli. Nolan snapped his head toward the voice, his eyes flashing. You want to be arrested too, lady? But this time, the atmosphere was different. A few other people started to speak up, scolding him. Phone cameras were raised high, and for the first time, Nolan's arrogant expression faltered. Elena remained silent. She knew the moment had arrived, not to retaliate, but to record everything. She scanned the crowd with a sharp gaze almost invisible behind her tired facade. Data sufficient, evidence complete, but the game isn't over. 5. Flashback, 3 days earlier. 3 days before the incident, Elena was in a small briefing room at the IAB precinct office in Lower Manhattan. Lieutenant Davis held a thick folder of photos and reports. On a monitor, CCTV images flashed, officers taking money from vendors, known criminals working with cops, and several familiar faces. One of them was Officer Nolan. Elena, you're going deep undercover. We need direct evidence from the field. Nolan's been reported 3 times for abuse of power, but every report vanishes. We suspect he's part of a bigger network, Davis explained. Elena nodded. I understand, sir. But why do I have to pose as a canner? Davis looked at her seriously. Because they will never suspect someone they consider invisible. From that position, you'll see their true faces. Elena fell silent. She knew the assignment was tough, but in her heart, she was determined. She had seen her own father, a cab driver, beaten by cops just for refusing to pay a street tax. That wound hadn't healed. This time, she wanted to see justice served, no matter how small. 6. The old wound. Late that night, after the morning's incident, Elena sat in the small, single-room occupancy, SRO, apartment she used as her undercover base. She looked at a scrape on her hand from falling into the gutter. Her cart of bottles was half full. She took a deep breath. Dad, if you were still alive, you'd probably be proud of your daughter right now, she murmured. The sound of traffic echoed from the street below. Only a dim streetlight bore witness. In her pocket, a small recording device was still on, capturing the entire incident. That evidence would be sent to Davis tonight through a secure channel. But before she could hit send, her phone vibrated. A text message. Be careful. Someone knows you're not a canner. Davis. Elena froze. She stared at the screen. In the distance, she heard a car stop at the end of the alley. 2 shadows got out. 7. Voices in the dark. The footsteps got closer. Elena pretended to straighten her cart. One of them spoke quietly, but his tone was sharp. Dot said the canner girl is weird. Never begs, but always circles the same territory. The boss says to watch her. Make sure she's not recording anything. Elena held her breath. Her heart. 1. The sky before the storm. The rain had just stopped. Its remnants clung to the leaves, creating the distinct smell of wet pavement. In the sky, the orange of dusk slowly turned to gray. Elena sat in front of her SRO building, her eyes tired, listening to footsteps in the distance. The alley was quiet, but her heart was full of anxiety. She had just received news from Lieutenant Davis. The video got headquarters' attention, but don't pull out yet. We need more, specifically the extortion transaction involving Nolan. Elena stared at the message. She knew the order meant she had to stay longer in a place that was no longer safe. Since the video of the incident went viral, Nolan had been agitated. He was looking for anyone who betrayed the badge. And the most suspicious person, of course, was the canner who dared to look at him without fear. 2. The backlash. At the precinct, Officer Nolan sat at his desk, his face tense. The report from downtown had arrived. Internal Affairs. His name was now on an evaluation list. But Nolan was sure if he could find out who spread the video, he might have a chance to save his career. "I bet it was that damn canner," he said to his partner. No way, Sarge. She's just... Just what? You saw her. She was too calm during the whole thing. Her eyes. They weren't the eyes of some junkie. I've been on the street a long time. My gut tells me she's not who she says she is. The partner was quiet. He knew his senior officer was stubborn, but he felt guilty. He remembered clearly how Elena was treated like she wasn't human. But he was also afraid to speak up. In an institution like this, crossing a senior officer was career suicide. 3. The unexpected arrival. That afternoon, as Elena was collecting cans near a small overpass, a black sedan pulled over. A middle-aged man in glasses got out. His clothes were neat, but his face was worried. "Elena," he called softly. Elena turned quickly. "Lieutenant Davis? Why are you here?" "I thought I was supposed to stay put." Davis scanned the area, making sure no one was watching. Situations changed. Nolan's getting reckless. He's been harassing witnesses, including the deli owner, Anna. "We're worried about your safety." Elena's face tensed. "Anna? Is she okay?" "For now," Davis said. "But she's scared. Said someone's been watching her deli since this morning." Elena clenched her fists. "I can't stand by, sir. If they're messing with civilians, this has gone too far." "Calm down," Davis said. "Tonight, we're starting a tactical operation. But we need you to bait Nolan to a location where we can get a clean recording. Yesterday's viral video isn't enough. We need a direct recording of him making a transaction or a threat." Elena looked at him. "So I'm the bait again." Davis met her gaze with empathy. "Yes. But this time, you're not alone." 4. The night's scenario. The plan was simple but high risk. Elena had to approach Nolan's usual spot. Pretend to be a scavenger who overheard talk about the shakedowns' crew was running on the street vendors. She would offer to be an intermediary. To record the conversation, Davis and his team would be 100 yards away, monitoring via a tiny earpiece. It had to look natural. That night, Elena looked at her reflection in a small, cracked mirror. Her face looked harder than before. "I'm not just a canner tonight," she whispered. "I'm a witness for everyone who doesn't have a voice." 5. The second encounter. At 8 p.m., Elena walked toward the patrol car where Nolan usually hung out, smoking. The streetlights were dim, the atmosphere quiet. Just the sound of distant traffic. She approached cautiously. Nolan turned. His face tightened. "You again? What do you want?" Elena looked down, feigning fear. "Sorry, officer. I just wanted to say. I heard some people talking. That you can help keep M from getting shut down. I know the vendor. He said he's willing to pay." Nolan narrowed his eyes. "Who told you to say that?" Elena bit her lip. "Nobody, sir. I just want to help. Maybe I get a small cut. I need to eat, officer." Nolan was quiet for a long time, studying her. Then he exhaled smoke slowly. So you want to help, huh?" Elena nodded. "Yes, sir. But please, don't be mad like yesterday. I'm just trying to get by." Nolan laughed, a short, harsh sound. "You got guts, talking to me after I kicked your stuff." Elena forced an awkward smile. "I forgot about that, officer. What's important is I can help." In the distance, Davis watched through binoculars from an unmarked car. The audio feed was clear in his headset. "Good, Elena. Keep the pace. Don't rush it." 6. The hidden price. Nolan finally took the bait. He started talking more openly, feeling superior. "If that vendor wants to stay safe, tell him to pay me directly. Not my guys. $200 a month should be enough. I'll guarantee no raids on his spot." Elena nodded slowly, pretending to memorize it. "Okay, officer. But Can I get a little something for my trouble? Nolan looked at her cynically. We'll see if you behave. He leaned in. Too close. His breath smelled like cigarettes and coffee. Elena fought the urge to step back. From the earpiece, Davis's voice was quiet but firm. We have the recording. That's enough. Elena pulled back slowly. But before she could leave, Nolan's eyes fixed on her jacket. Wait. What's that in your pocket? Elena instinctively covered her pocket. Oh, just a recorder, officer. For tracking my bottle sales. But Nolan lunged and snatched it. In an instant, his face turned dark with rage. He stared at the small device, then at Elena with a murderous look. So it was you. You're the one who leaked that video. 7. Chase in the rain. Elena ran. Hard. Rain suddenly started pouring again, heavy. Thunder cracked overhead. She ducked into a narrow alley, fumbling to activate the emergency beacon on her wrist. The signal for Davis's team. Behind her, Nolan's shout echoed, followed by the footsteps of his partners. Get her. Don't let her get away. Elena glanced back, seeing their shadows under the flickering streetlight. Her heart hammered. She almost slipped on the wet pavement, but kept running toward the overpass, the prearranged meeting point. As she reached the corner, a white sedan screeched to a halt in front of her. The door flew open and a familiar voice yelled, "Get in, Elena." Davis. She leaped in. The car sped off, leaving the narrow street behind. In the distance, the sound of police sirens grew fainter. 8. The tables turned. The next morning, a huge story rocked the local news and social media. A new video had emerged, not just the assault, but the audio recording of Nolan's extortion attempt. It was all there, including his own admission. The headlines read, NYPD officer implicated in extortion and abuse. New evidence reveals modus operandi. On the screen, Nolan's face was displayed clearly. The video went viral, sparking public outrage. Many other small business owners came forward with similar testimonies of shakedowns and intimidation in his precinct. Meanwhile, at the IAB office, Elena sat across from Lieutenant Davis. Her face was pale but calm. In her hand was the recorder Nolan had snatched. Turns out, she had a backup hidden in her shoe. Good work, Elena, Davis said. You know, this might be the start of a real change in the department. A lot of people who were silent are now willing to talk. Elena smiled faintly. I just don't want to see people get stepped on anymore, sir. Because I've been in their shoes. 1. After the spotlight fades. 2 months after Officer Nolan's case rocked the public, the news cycle moved on. Her name had been a national topic, the undercover cop who posed as a canner for justice. But like all viral stories, public attention eventually shifted. All that remained was the quiet and the scars that hadn't healed. Elena was now living in a small department-assigned apartment in Queens. In the morning, she'd turn on the radio, listen to the news, then look out the window. New York was still busy, still hard, still the same. But in her eyes, the city now had two faces, the one seen in the media and the one she'd met in the dark alleys where the forgotten struggled to survive. On her table, a cup of black coffee grew cold. She looked at a news report about police reform. The NYPD promises to strengthen internal oversight and crack down on ethical violations. Elena smiled faintly. Promises always sound good on TV, she thought. But what I saw on the street is a lot more complicated. 2. Shadows of the past. Every night, the nightmares still came. She'd wake up to the sound of falling bottles and Nolan's voice echoing in her head. Sometimes she remembered Anna's fearful eyes, or the little kids who watched a scavenger get assaulted without understanding why. Elena knew the trauma was part of the price. But something hurt more, a feeling of guilt. She often wondered, did the justice I fought for actually bring peace to everyone? Because after Nolan was arrested, several of his partners were just transferred, with no clear disciplinary action. And in other precincts, she still heard rumors of similar shakedowns. One man fell, but the system remained. 3. The unexpected invitation. One morning, Elena received an official letter. A city government logo was at the top, with bold text, "Invitation to National Discussion, Justice for the Underserved." She was invited as a guest speaker. At first, she hesitated. She wasn't a politician, not an official, and she hated speaking in front of cameras. But Lieutenant Davis convinced her. If you don't tell your story, they'll just listen to people who only know the theory. You're the one who knows the street. Elena looked at him, then nodded. All right, sir. But I don't want to be portrayed as a hero. Davis smiled. Don't worry. Your story isn't about a hero. It's about being human. 4. The stage and reality. The day of the event arrived. The large conference room in a downtown hotel was full of journalists, activists, and city officials. Elena sat on the panel in simple clothes, a white blouse and black slacks. Around her, people spoke in complicated legal and bureaucratic jargon. When it was her turn, the room fell silent. She looked at the audience, one by one, then spoke, her voice quiet but clear. I don't want to talk about big systems. I just want to talk about one simple thing, what it feels like to be stepped on, not as an enemy, but as a human being who is considered invisible. The room was still. Some cameras stopped moving. Elena continued, her voice trembling but firm. I went undercover as a canner, and I learned that poverty isn't just about an empty wallet. Sometimes, poverty is a lack of empathy in others. Thunderous applause followed. But in the midst of it, Elena felt a mix of bitterness and relief. She didn't want pity. She just wanted to be heard. 5. New shadows. After the event, some media outlets revisited her story. But behind the spotlight, the reaction wasn't all positive. There were cynical comments online, and some colleagues at the precinct began to distance themselves. To some, Elena was seen as someone who had aired the department's dirty laundry. One afternoon, she was called into Davis's office. Elena, I have to be honest, Davis said, his tone heavy. Some of the higher-ups feel you're appearing in the media too much. They're worried you're becoming the wrong kind of symbol. Elena smiled bitterly. The wrong symbol? I just told the truth. I know. But sometimes, the truth isn't popular. Elena was quiet for a long time. Then she said softly, in that case, I'll step back from fieldwork for a while. I need some time. Davis looked at her with respect. Are you sure? Elena nodded. I'm not stopping the fight, sir. I just need to breathe. 6. Return to the old streets. A few weeks later, Elena returned to the place she had been undercover. The South Bronx. Not for a mission, but to find peace. She walked the alley that had been her small territory. She saw kids playing, vendors laughing, and Anna still running the deli. Elena, you came back. Anna cried, giving her a hug. Elena smiled. I missed your coffee, Anna. They sat on a wooden bench, enjoying the afternoon, watching the street. A light drizzle began to fall, reminding Elena of the night she had run. Is it quieter now, Anna? Elena asked. Anna nodded. More or less. The new cops are decent. They help clean the street, don't ask for money. Elena smiled. So it wasn't for nothing, everything that happened. But Anna looked at her gently. But are you at peace, Elena? The question made Elena pause. She looked toward the streetlights that were beginning to flicker on. Not completely, Anna. But I learned one thing. Sometimes, to uphold justice, you also have to make peace with the pain. 7. Footprints behind the camera. That night, Elena went home and turned on her laptop. She opened an old folder with the video recordings from her undercover operation. Clips from those tense days. But this time, she didn't see the violence or the humiliation. She saw the resilience of the common people, the cab driver who kept smiling even during a shakedown, the vendor who prayed amid fear, and the children who played, unaware of the injustice around them. Elena stared at the screen for a long time, then wrote a small note. Justice isn't born from a uniform or a rank, but from a heart willing to see another's suffering as its own. She saved the note in a new folder. The Beacon Project. 8. The Small Light. A few months later, Elena started a small project in her community. She invited several former victims of extortion and other locals to attend basic Know Your Rights workshops. Her goal was simple: to make sure they knew their rights and had the courage to speak up. "I once pretended to be a canner to open people's eyes," she told the attendees. "Now, I want you to open the world's eyes." Anna joined as a volunteer, providing coffee and food. Young people helped record the sessions, uploading them to social media. Slowly, their community grew. Not because of power, but because of mutual trust. Elena felt her life had direction again. She might not be in the field as an IAB detective, but she was now on a quieter battlefield, educating and empowering. 9. A message from the past. One morning, Elena received a letter from the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau. It was short but moving. "Thank you for your service. The follow-up investigation, based on your report, uncovered a wider extortion ring across multiple precincts. Many young officers have been inspired by your story." Elena read the letter slowly, staring at the signature at the bottom. She smiled faintly. Maybe the system wasn't perfect, but the seeds of change were there. 10. An ending, not a conclusion. That evening, Elena walked along the edge of the Bronx River. The sky was a soft orange. She saw a young boy picking up plastic bottles, putting them in a worn-out bag. His clothes looked like the ones she used to wear. Elena approached him and asked gently, "Collecting those to help your parents?" The boy nodded. "Yeah, lady. For my little sister's school stuff." Elena took out a $20 bill and looked at the boy. "Keep this. But don't stop going to school. The world needs honest people like you." The boy smiled shyly. "Thanks, lady." As the boy walked away, Elena looked up at the sky and smiled. She knew her fight didn't end in an interrogation room,